everyone, and welcome back to the nice sandy shores of the Brightworks. Today we are taking a look at Supreme Straits. You know it, you love it. Probably one of the most common maps of all time, right up there next to All That Glitters. But today we'll be dipping our toes into the water with Redonian, our red team leader here on the southwestern side of the map, as they show us what they've got on the naval field. Going up against them, it's going to be the blue team leader spawning all the way back in the eco position, the tech position, although I guess this time the air position, it's going to be Quiet Listener. Going for that Cortex early air, going to have those shurikens out. I sure hope to see. Going to be some good stuff. Those shurikens are so powerful. They really can swing the early game quite immensely. They can make any tank push shut down very, very quickly. Get those very efficient trades. It's always a lovely thing to see. Now, this was a viewer submitted game. I believe this one was submitted by, hold on, let me scroll through here. I would recognize the name if I prepared a little bit more for these. One of these players here. Black Diamond. There it is. Yeah, I maybe should have prepared that a little bit more. Black Diamond here was the viewer who submitted this game. He did so through the Gmail system, but I'm officially nixing the Gmail thing, except for unless you really have no other options, and instead moving over to the Discord, which will be available in the description below this video. The Discord channel will be a link to the Discord channel will be opened. We have a nice little community there, and you can go submit all the replays your heart's desire, and I will take a look at them. Can't guarantee that I'll get to your replay, but there's a good odds. I don't get a tremendous amount of replays. I don't get an unfathomable amount of replays, but I'm starting to get more and more of them, which is, I mean, first of all, it's great, and I love you guys. I love seeing what games you guys get up to, but also it means I have to be, a little more picky about which games I cover, maybe. Now, already on this match, do we have any aggression? I think I've stalled about long enough. I usually try to cover at least the first 2 minutes. That's about as long as it takes for these players to get their bases up and running here. It looks like, for the most part, Fireball and Bruce are going to be holding the front lines here for the blue team. They're going to be going up against Corporal, SRAM, and Jim Jumbo. Everybody is vehicles? No. Looks like Fireball is going to be bots. Looks like Bruce is going to be vehicles, Corporal SRAM is going to be vehicles, and Jim Jumbo is also going to be vehicles. So a lot more vehicles than bots. I'm not surprised by that at all. With how flat this terrain is and how much metal there is to reclaim right here, vehicles makes a whole lot of sense, so I'm not shocked to see that at all. Corporal SRAM moving the commander pretty far forward, does not have any sort of escort or anything. Could get a D-gun off here. Oh, that was very close. Almost managed to D-gun 2 of those, but instead only gets 1. 3 D-guns for 1 blitz. That's 1,500 energy. Is it quite worth it? I don't know. You tell me. I'm not sure. I don't think I appreciate that trade all too much. I think I'd rather just build a light laser tower, so this makes a whole lot more sense. Of course, building this laser tower far forward is very, very nice. It's going to deny quite a lot of this metal reclaim here. If we take a look at our superior metal vision, you can see that there is quite a lot of reclaim. A couple thousand, well, not really a couple thousand, more like almost 1.7 thousand, I want to say, between all the rocks here. And that is a tremendous boon to whoever should be able to claim it. Now, right now, if the red team acts fast, they have superior control over this, and so that could all go back into their economies. 1,500 metal, I mean, that's definitely enough to get a very, very superior lead in the T1 economy, if not start up a T2 transition. So, wouldn't be surprised if one of these players that manages to reclaim a bunch off the front line here ends up going ahead and going into that T2. Typically, on Supreme Straits, what we see is this player here, Infernium's position, goes for this geothermal, sacrifices the commander, goes up to a T2 lab, and hands out T2. They should hand out T2 to this player here, and this player here. This player, in the position of Black Diamond, usually has a couple of options. They can either go into, well, they actually have a lot of options. They can go into hovercraft and move the hovercraft. Let me clear these circles real quick. Naval battle, by the way, in the Southern Sea, fairly well contested by Redonian right now. Still a contest in the Northern Sea, so we'll check back on that in a second. But this position here for Black Diamond, you have a lot of options here. Things that we've seen before. Going for a seaplane lab in the back here, go for a little bit of air support, and then some of those gunships or the bombers or anything like that to do a little bit of early damage. Or you can try and go for a naval lab out here in the ocean, build a couple of build turrets over here, construction turrets in this little section, and they build a naval lab right here. And then you can start streaming boats out in this direction. You can help win your sea back, because of course this sea lane is very difficult to win. You can also go for vehicle or bot support, just send units up to the front line. Speaking of front lines, massive explosion right there. That's going to be a commander trade, actually, between Corporal SRAM and Fireball, who both lose their commander, and a nice little puddle right there. Somebody needs to jump on top of reclaiming that immediately, and I think Jim Jumbo is in a perfect position here. Could definitely just move the commander in and eat up those corpses, but instead he's having a little bit of an APM issue at the moment. Actually having a problem spending his resources right now. Needs a lot more build power. Yeah, we're overflowing a lot of metal, and I think that's probably going to come back to haunt him here. Corporal SRAM in a little bit better of a position, needs more energy, needs more build power, needs more of everything. That's why you need a whole bunch of constructors. You know, it's one of those early hangups. It's a problem that I had when I very early on was learning to play this game, and it's a problem that I think is, well, it's understandable that a lot of people struggle with it, but the idea is constructors are cheap. For the value that you get out of a constructor, they're very, very cheap, and it's easy to think that like the cost 135 metal is difficult to justify for a constructor. But you're talking about limitless possibilities compared with, you know, a measly cost, right? And so constructors are actually very, very cheap to build, and so you should definitely build a surplus of them. And have a plan for them. That's another thing that definitely helps me, is when you build constructors, build a couple of them and think, okay, these constructors are going to go build this, then this, then this, and then queue them back to your lab or to your commander or somewhere where you're going to remember to go pick them up later. That way, once the project is done, they'll be ready to use again, and then you can just send them out to go do that. And you'll start to get used to that. You'll start to send out these waves of constructors, right? So in the mirrored position here to Black Diamond, Antares has gone for a hovercraft lab and has done exactly what I was talking about, sending out these hovercraft in a little bit of harassment here. Hovercraft, of course, very powerful against the Navy in the sense that they can ignore those torpedo launchers, which usually harass down naval units quite tediously. Red has decisively won this sea, though, so I'd love to see them closing off the access lanes over here. You can see that there is already a destroyer starting to harass the lines over here. Sniping that metal extractor is quite nice. A gauntlet was built over here. That's interesting. That's really far back for a gauntlet, but I suppose if it's going to help you capture your line and you remember to move it forward incrementally here, eventually that's going to be well worth it. In the meantime, though, the loss of those commanders has meant that the front line has destabilized and, well, destabilized for the red team, but has restabilized for the blue team here. Trying to get some music going here. Very finicky. I have a settings reset every once in a while. Not by choice, mind you, but you know, it just happens. One of those perks of the life. A day in the life of a Brightworks. I love this destroyer over here continuing to harass, especially shutting down these metal extractors. Shutting down two 4.3 metal extractors is a huge hit to the economy, especially early game, but you know, even in the late game, every bit counts, right? Seems like there's a little bit of confusion about what Nonchalant should be going for. I don't mind this whatsoever, going up to the T2 lab and just getting that T2 economy up and running. You can always go for tumbleweeds. Tumbleweeds are an excellent and very, very economic way to get your C back from essentially any enemy. It takes a massive amount of resources to counter tumbleweeds, and if you spam them across in a pattern like that, you're going to be able to effectively wipe out whatever naval player you are contesting. And then it frees you up to build your naval lab and start rebuilding, and you can reclaim the naval control, and then you can go shell away at these with missile ships, or heaven forbid you even go into a Epoch or a Black Hydra, any of those capital ships, whatever your decision might be. Now, it's nice that we're trading out positively here, but what we really don't want to do is throw away a whole bunch of metal, and you can see that the tanks going down here are just going to leave delicious corpses for somebody to come eat up. 405 metal right there. This will be another 200 or so in those corpses. Yeah, it's a very costly trade to push with a bunch of tanks if you're not going to get a huge amount of damage done. Now, this is nice, jumping on top of a couple of these rocket hovers. That is actually a really, really nice trade. That's exactly where those thugs want to be. Oh, will they get the kills, though? They take one of them down. I think they probably could have gotten a few more of them if they're a little more focused. Their attention was split between the gauntlet here and the rocket hovers, so that's unfortunate micro there, but hard to blame him. He probably wasn't. It's difficult to control those units. Sometimes the attack priority seems a little off, but all said and done, that's a fairly minor critique on an otherwise successful little repulsion there. Blue team is coming back into the swing of things here. We need T2 on the front lines. If we're not going to have these 4.3 metal extractors, we did get this one up and running. That's good. This one is still down. If we're not going to have those running, we need to get T2 in the back line as quick as possible here. There was a T2 lab for Nonchalant, but he didn't hand out T2, which is quite a bummer. There is a T2 lab here as well for T. Cole likes Pole. And it looks like T2 was handed out. I see Bruce has a T2 Cortex, so I'm guessing that's where that came from. And there is another T2 coming down from this way. All right, very nicely done. Or maybe it was Fireball handing them out, actually. Oh, no, I'm confused. Oh, no. Yeah, sorry. Okay, it was T. Cole. So T. Cole has handed out T2 constructors. It's very, very good. Gonna get these T2 metal extractors up, and that's exactly what you need to claw yourself back in the straits here. Especially when you're dealing with this naval harassment like this. That's so annoying to deal with. Frigates here taking some damage from this commander walking underneath him. Probably not what those frigates were expecting to encounter, but losing those here is definitely not ideal. Yeah, one of them manages to sneak away. I'd love to see this go try and do some damage over here. If you manage to take out some of the production facilities over here, that'd be really nice, but this is really the difference here. T. Cole likes Pole already handing out another T2 constructor to his land-based, the land-based economy of his northern naval player, and that is going to be a massive, massive boon here. As you can see that this player in the sea lane has no T2 whatsoever. It should always be somebody's job, usually this player's job, or this player's job, to get this player a T2, because if these mexes can go up to T2 as soon as possible, the naval player is going to have a much, much better time. And the question is, what are we thinking of as far as wind conditions here? Teaspoon is going up to a whole lot of windmills. He's already got a fusion reactor going for a metal storage. Interesting. Metal storage into a energy converter. He's already got one energy converter, so I wonder what the second one's for. I guess he wants to make sure he doesn't excess any energy. That's all well and good. Going for more build power as well. I was going to say we're running on 6 nano turrets, which is not quite enough here. I'd love to see, yeah, I think about 9 to 12 there is probably a good number. Well, going into a hardened energy storage as well. Okay, just making sure we have enough of a buffer, I suppose, to go into all these things. Of course, when nano turrets are building, they use up a massive amount of energy and metal. So that explains that. Advanced fusion reactor almost done here for Shuriken. And yeah, I think that's probably a good step for economy. 12-minute advanced fusion reactor. Not the fastest advanced fusion reactor, but still very, very quick. And that's kind of what we expect in the backline, right? We sort of expect that the backline's supposed to tech up as quickly as they can, get into some sort of stage where they can produce T3. But the question, of course, is when do you stop producing economy and when do you start going into T3? Once you have about 4 advanced fusion reactors, you can very solidly fund more fusion reactors without actually, while producing T3, I should say. You can effectively afford both. When you're in the middle of that, though, you usually go through a series of stages in the middle of the game where it would be very, 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 very helpful to have a massive amount of T2 or even just a little bit of T3 out on the field. So you have to make that decision. Is it worth going into, greeding all the way up to that many advanced fusion reactors, or is it better to just help your team by sending some units forward? Almost always it's better to help your team by sending units forward, but sometimes if the front lines look particularly solid, going up to that extra eco isn't gonna hurt, because if your front line is that solid, it's likely because the enemy's backline hasn't been contributing significantly. Not to point at these guys, I'm not using them as an example, I'm just using the sides here, but effectively, if the enemy's backline hasn't contributed effectively, it means that their front line has probably caved in, and that's probably why you're doing well. So in order to keep up with their backline, it might make sense for you to continue ecoing. Just some of the decision-making process you have to think about when you're ecoing the backline. I know oftentimes the eco position looks like it's the easiest position. It looks like the simplest. I promise you it isn't. But you don't have to take it from me, because everyone in the game will blame you if you end up losing the game. when there's no 15-minute Marauder rush, when there's no 18-minute nuke rush or 16-minute nuke rush, when these timings aren't hit, when the unit production quotas aren't met, yeah, people will start to voice their concerns. So you can take what I say at face value, but if that's not good enough for you, feel free to just join a multiplayer game, and I'm sure you'll be let known exactly what they think about your current build. Agitator was built here on the front lines. It already has a chevron, actually. 3 kills to its name, and I'm sure that chevron is from doing a bunch of damage. Agitators are slightly better than the gauntlets, so I'm a little less critical to see them on the front lines here. It's not uncommon that we see them on the Supreme Straits, specifically the Supreme Strait. Just because this is such a tight chokehold, and yeah, a little bit of long-range static defense sort of makes sense. Sheldon here doing a great job of blasting it to smithereens, though, and you can see their long-range Sheldon fire will quickly evaporate that, turning it into a pile of rubble and smoke. We could get some resbots up here to try and patch it back up, but it looks like the greedy nano turrets are too hungry to get that off the front lines, and so it will fall. We are up to a T2 lab here for Jim Jumbo. Are we on T2 for Corporal SRAM? We are not. So if we're not going to T2, then we might as well leverage that T1 lab with a whole bunch of rovers out on the front lines, because you're never going to really be able to compete with the T2 once it comes out in mass. So spamming out just an endless stream of rovers here, or maybe just piling them up, make a big cluster of rovers, maybe 50 or so rovers, and just shoot them out across the entire Supreme Strait. You're going to be in a really, really good spot to get a bunch of scouting off, but B, you're also going to possibly shut down a little bit of economy, maybe even sneak into the back line and pop a couple of energy converters. Always a satisfying moment to pop an energy converter or two, especially with those very cheap units, rovers or ticks or anything like that. Rascals. Sizable little navy has been built here, going up against sizable static defense, I suppose. That's a whopping amount of metal that has been dropped into static defense here. 3,760 metal in floating heavy laser turrets. If we look at torpedo towers as well, that's another couple hundred metal, totaling a grand total of 4,100 metal. And there's a reason why static defense is prone to falling to units, and it's because units, unlike static defense, are capable of movement. Yeah, I know. It's that's a shocking one, but it's a difficult truth to learn. But once you learn it, you're going to be in a really good spot here. Heavy laser tower is going to start firing away. There's a couple destroyers behind here, not to discount those. Oh, and there is actually a couple of frigates. Okay, I didn't see those. A couple of frigates are going to even this fight out a little bit more there, so I'm not too unhappy about that. Although this engagement is really poor here. Not sure what the posturing is here at all. We could have taken one fight against these 4, and then taken another fight against some of these, and then taking a third fight against these guys, resulting in 3 1v8s, which would have gone a whole lot better than whatever this was. 1v8 v 1v4-ish, kind of. Yeah, that was a really, really poor engagement. With that, Encoded has just lost the naval battle. Or at the very least he should. 1 reclaim sub and we can eat up all of this juicy metal on the bottom of the seafloor. Basically 4 grand of metal left over on the ocean floor should be more than enough to field a navy that can easily crush through whatever defenses Encode has coming up over here in the water. Now Encode of course does have this land-based economy. He should be sending this constructor to go build those advanced metal extractors over here. That would be ideal. But going up to a fusion reactor is certainly not the wrong idea either. Now of course he's equally matched here because the player Paul 3D87 has already gone up to those advanced metal extractors because he was given a T2 constructor from his backline. Overall, all things considered, I think I like the backline support from the blue team just a little bit more than I like it from the red team. Jim Jumbo's commander in a little bit of trouble here as these Sheldons have hit that critical mass where they can start sweeping through vehicles quite easily. Down goes the commander. And the Sheldon are... well, they're actually falling right now. Tank's taking a lovely engagement from the side here. You can see engaging at that specific angle means that only about 2 or 3 of those Sheldon can fire at a single time. When you take an attack like this, multiple of those Sheldon are going to be able to fire you at any one time. Yeah, that was quite a decent little engagement there. Now there's tons and tons of tanks that are walking forward here, rolling forward here. Gonna need to address this. A couple of lightning tanks, I mean, they're good, don't get me wrong, but yeah, not quite good enough. Sheldon also shelling away, trying to get the trade that they're looking for here, but I don't think they're going to find what they like to see. Fiends are pumped out from the backline, though, and those are exactly what we like to see. In combination with those shurikens, going to effectively shut down all that tank aggression. Very nicely done. Fairly efficient way of dealing with that problem. Build power has been popped, or maybe it wasn't there in the beginning. Yeah, so this T2 lab is pumping out units very slowly. But I also fear for this base. That's something you have to, specifically on Supreme Straits, be very aware of, is if you're playing in this position here that we see Corporal SRAM is playing in, You always have to be watching this northern sea, because if you ever notice that it's lost completely, like you notice that you just have nobody in the water over here, you have to be very, very careful, because missile ships are prone to coming right over in this direction, shelling away at your base, and yeah, there will be very little left after the the ensuing missile explosions. Case in point right here, you can see the missile ship firing away at these coastal bases right here. Now a nuke was launched. Oh, no anti-nukes in time, and so I believe that nuke is going to come down, and it's going to come down hard. Infernium taking a nuclear missile to the face, blasting away all of his economy, all of his metal extractors, his geothermals, left with essentially just the commander left. WTF moment. He's running away now, but it's, I mean, the nuke is over, my friend. You can get back to rebuilding here. What a bummer. Yeah, what an absolute bummer. Not sure why he's continuing to run away here. He should be rebuilding. I feel like that's the right move here, but I suppose I'd be a little bit shell-shocked if a nuke landed on top of me as well, so maybe that's fair. A bunch of platypus are looking to break this line here, but there is a lot of defenses all closing in from different directions. You can see moving in from the left-hand side as well as the right-hand side. They're going to catch these platypus in a nice little pincer maneuver here. Or at the very least they could. Not quite going to engage in the direction that I was predicting here. It looks like the dolphins are just trying to get ahead of the platypus. Blockade them rather than surround them. The surround is quite a bit better, but the blockade is a little more comfortable. It's a little bit less intensive to pull off, and it's a little bit more easier to read at a glance whether you're winning or losing the engagement here. These Dolphins will handily win this engagement, though. Even numbers, I'm going to hand it to the Dolphins every time. They put out a massive amount of damage per second, and especially against these little platypus here, which are not really meant for sea combat. They are just sort of capable of it. They know of it theoretically, but they are not well versed in it. Another nuke was launched, but the anti-nuke here from Black Diamond will catch that one that's thrown across the map. Very nicely done. Very good idea to have the forethought to bring that up. I wouldn't have predicted that this player had gone for the nuke, but it is certainly an option, especially since we've seen that they've been pushed out of the water here with effectively no way to get back in, because Red has such a dominating control over this lane of the map. Now, you always have to be asking, what are they preparing on the other side of the map? That's where scouting comes in really important. As the air player, Blue should definitely be thinking about that right now, although currently looking to get himself a shiny new advanced fusion reactor. Eating up the windmills is quite nice here. You already have the fusion reactor to fund this as far as the energy goes, so you don't really need the energy those wind turbines produce. They take up a lot of space. Actually, I really, really like that he's eating all of those up and then going to, I'm assuming at the very least, put all that into this advanced fusion reactor. Very nicely done. Going to mean that this will come up relatively shortly here, just a couple more seconds, 20 seconds or so, as this advanced fusion reactor gets underway, and that's going to be a nice little eco boom for Quiet Listener. Now, in the meantime, the orange player, the air player for the red team, has decided to go for a little bit of a scout, and you can see these T2 scout planes. They are very, very efficient at their scouting. If we take a look here at what the red team sees, you can see they actually got a really decent scout off. They know about the majority of the base over here. They got full vision of the base here. They got a vision of all of this right here, and they got a little bit of vision of the cyan base as well as the green base. So those T2 planes actually managed to get a decent enough scout. Now we can see a bunch of Sumos. I was thinking of SeaWorld and Sumo at the same time. Anyway, Sumos and Fiends marching forward with artillery support, both in the form of a Sheldon and a Mauser. There is a couple of those T3 Razorbacks out, though, and those are certainly one option to shut down effectively any of this T2 shenanigans here. Especially Cortex shenanigans, but also Armada shenanigans as well. I mean, it's sharpshooters, the T2 Armada sniper bot. Trying to think of the role that it filled, but it really is its own thing. It's got its own role. It made its own role from itself. The sniper bot is very, very good at blasting down those early T3 units, making this a difficult push to instrument here. Now the tick spam is quite nice. It's going to illuminate any commanders that might be hiding in front of these units and revealing them in case they were trying to go for a cheeky D-gun on these Razorbacks. One of them will fall. The other one looking relatively healthy here, and it's going to start blasting away at a whole lot of these Sheldons, getting an excellent trade. That's its job. As a T3 unit, its job is effectively to kill as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Gonna blast down the T2 lab here, gonna take down all the build power as well. Going after the fusion in its last moments here. I think it's gonna get it, and that is the yellow player completely ravaged here by this very, very aggressive push from these Razorbacks. A lot of units went down to make that happen, but I think the damage is justified here. Now, I'd love to see some resurrections here. A couple of res bots might pick up this Razorback, might even pick up this one, and be able to push back against this horde moving forward. But that is a lot of Sheldon, and it's difficult to field essentially anything that can stand up to that much Sheldon fire sustained over any amount of distance. That was that's exactly the superpower of the Sheldon right there, by the way. A couple of cheeky tumbleweeds, by the way. Also, by the way, by the other way. But the power of the Sheldon is the fact that they can push forward, fire, and then retreat backwards when they're in danger. Tumbleweeds were grouped up right there, didn't like that one bit, and they will go down quickly. Just as much to themselves as they did to whatever was shooting at them. Shiva are out now, but you really need to be careful with those. As you can see, they friendly fire themselves more often than than they enemy fire basically anything else. They're decent against Razorbacks, but you have to spread them out, and you have to make sure that, again, that friendly fire isn't going to just be hurling rockets and plasma directly at their toes. Case in point. Sheldon also getting a decent trade against these Shiva. Shiva just so much less threatening than Razorbacks, all said and done. They're definitely a siege unit, not necessarily an assault unit. It's about time Redonian thinks about getting out of the water here. Solid naval control has been established, and I think at this point in his game, he should be thinking about either building a T3 underwater lab or going for some sort of land-based economy, or going into a land-based tank push, or maybe a bot spam, something like that, something to help out on the land. Looks like he did take over for the player who was playing in the middle of the map here, who I guess backed off. I think that was Infernium. Oh no, Infernium actually just moved over here without reclaiming these metal extractors. That's a bit odd, but I guess it works. Okay, so actually, Redonian is thinking about getting into a land-based economy, so that's quite nice. All right, I was very confused there for a second. Big aerial engagement over here, a bunch of fighters clashing with a whole bunch of bombers. Looks like the forces here from Encoded did eventually fall, and so naval victory is going to be assured for Paul 3D87. Nicely done. I do see the res subs making their way downtown, swimming fast, faces past. They are metal bound. 8.5 thousand metal in this reclaim field, with another juicy 1.8 tied up in the lab alone. Definitely well worth it. Now the aerial assist here, the air support is very, very important. You can see these torpedo bombers dropping their payloads and blasting down whatever of these ships that they can. No anti-air included here. If there was, it was taken out first, which is a good target prioritization here. Not sure why this geothermal was abandoned. Maybe it was shot down by a missile ship or something. Either way, though, these destroyers will be bombed out of oblivion, or into oblivion rather, out of existence and into oblivion. Meanwhile, the front line has completely collapsed. You can see all those dead Shiva lying face down in the dirt. They're a little bit funny when they're laying down like that, aren't they? Karganath are going to be the next weapon of choice, but again, this tick spam is so annoying. The answer here is the Juno. The Juno missile is an anti-jammer, anti-radar, anti-scout spam weapon, and the tick certainly counts as scout spam. One Juno missile into the middle of this map, and you're going to be shutting down effectively half of what's terrorizing you here. The other answer is get a couple of artillery pieces of your own. One catapult would effectively tear apart this entire segment of units right here. Catapults are quite expensive, but I think you'd rather pay that price than have your front line die. Still nicely done that we're going up to T3. Good idea to include some of these shield generators as well. This is risky though, so you have to be careful, right? If you're gonna put some constructors out here, remember that an explosion might land right here, and it might chain react two of these, and that'll chain react these two, and that'll chain react these two, and that'll chain react all of these. So you have to be careful. It's like leaving a little gunpowder trail that leads outside your base. You don't want someone to go ignite that, and then suddenly, yeah, you've got yourself a explosive critical situation to deal with there. Missile ship firing away onto the shore, but not sure exactly what it should be targeting here. Looks like it's just kind of firing into the path of these grunts. Not a waste of effect, but certainly could do a little bit better, I believe. At the very least, taking out these advanced metal extractors could be one mission that would be assigned to it. The other, of course, being taking out all this static defense that's just lingering on the coast here. Big airwave moving out from the orange player, who I must say has done a phenomenal job of getting aerial superiority out here. Yeah, actually doing a really, really nice job of getting airships out and about. He does have the bombers coming in. Massive bombing run headed in. Where are they going to target? There's an advanced fusion reactor here. It looks like that's their intended target of choice here. Advanced fusion reactor will pop, and that sends a massive amount of this economy up in smoke. Oh, I love to see these bombers turn and try to drop a payload on all of those energy converters. Looks like they're not going to get it, but that was already well enough damage to justify that bombing run. Very nicely done. That's exactly what we want to see. The air player making a significant contribution to relieving the pressures off of the front line, going to ease the burden of warfare here from the front just a little bit. We do have a catapult out eventually, so that's very nice to see. Going to help with that spam just a little bit. Probably going to cause quite a lot of friendly fire, but I would argue that Cortex just doesn't care. We are actually dumbfiring it, so that's quite nice. Going to dumbfire it forward here rather than trying to target units specifically. That should help mitigate some of that friendly fire. So all things said and done, I think Black Diamond is definitely on the right path here. Missile ship trying desperately to attack anything it can in the back. Oh. I was wondering where that nuke was headed. I guess we figured it out. Going to shut that down very quickly, I suppose. That's one way to do it. Man, those Shiva are so dangerous. I get so paranoid whenever I see Shiva on the front line because they're not really as rock solid as they seem. Economy-wise, the blue team has a slight lead, about 170 metal per second, better than the red team currently. And a lot of that is coming out of the back line here. As you can see, that we have quite a few advanced fusion reactors, quite a few energy converters, all coming up in the back, producing a whole lot of economy. Triple T2 air lab with a fourth and a fifth coming up behind it. That's quite a lot of metal to go into air labs. I don't know if we can afford that actually. Usually you need about 2 fusion reactors per air lab to make it viable, both in terms of energy conversion as well as the energy needed to produce the craft. So I think we're jumping the gun a little bit here, but that said, I'm not sure it's really the end of the world. The eco is continuing to grow in the background here. Meanwhile, the orange player, who is focused on economy and then just producing units, you can see going into multiple T2 labs as well as even the T1 labs stuck around here for a little while. Very, very nice. Yeah, going up to a 5 fusion reactor economy. Let me deselect those. There we go. 5 fusion reactor economy, going to be producing 15,000 energy per second, most of which can be converted, but the rest of which can be used to buy a whole lot of units, which is very, very nice to see. Going up to multiple anti-nukes here as well, not a bad idea, considering the prevalence of the nuclear spam technique. I'm not sure if any of you guys are fans of anime, but I happen to be a fan of a show called Baki. That is just ridiculous. It's about martial artists and fighters, and it's very wacky, but one of the things that I love about that is just how seriously they take everything. Like, there'll be a guy in that show whose like technique is that he trained by folding napkins for 20 years, and then they'll cut to like 400 years earlier in like ancient China, and they'll be like, this technique was passed down through the ages and perfected, but like the entire technique will be like the art of like folding napkins or something, and it's so over the top and redundant and hilarious. But that's exactly how I feel about the strategies that come up in this game, especially you know who really gives off that vibe is Nostradamus with a lot of his effects. First, you're going to have to build 400 advanced fusion reactors. Next, you're going to have to build 3 million energy converters. Then you'll be able to produce 4 juggernauts per second. Just ridiculous. Catapults, certainly very good against the T1, but also not to be underestimated against the T2 as well. Shiva getting an excellent trade against a lot of these T1 medium tanks. That's very good. Yeah, it looks like the T3 guarding the line here will be enough to dissuade the Shiva from pushing in. Those catapults can just siege away from so far. They really, really are a threat to behold. I feel like we don't see catapults used as much as we should. They're a very powerful weapon, and I feel like they should be leveraged a bit more commonly, but I feel like we don't see them nearly as often. You can see the amount of damage they can do in such a wide cone of effect is just tremendous. Really, really important to include those in a composition here. Important not to over-include them, of course. You have to make sure that you balance it with everything else. But I mean, even against the Juggernaut, that was like, what, 3% off that Juggernaut? Which, I mean, for a Juggernaut, it's relatively impressive. Doesn't seem like a lot, but yeah, Juggernauts are very difficult to kill. That was more than 3%. That was like a solid 10% off that Juggernaut right there. Yeah, that's I mean, a lot of that was the Titan as well, don't get me wrong, but yeah, those catapults, man, they actually do a lot of damage. Wouldn't mind seeing more of those in the future. Big airball is built over here. Not hairball, airball. Built over here by Antares. Antares Sudun. Solaris de Complare, something like that. Something, Protoss. Why did this... it feels like the fighters just ignored this massive ball of bombers. That felt a bit weird, but okay. All said and done, the flak turrets were enough to shut a lot of that down, but man, that got really close right there. Anti-nuke almost died, shields almost died, the build power almost died. A couple of energy converters died, but luckily they didn't chain react. And this, yeah, if this advanced fusion reactor had popped right there, that would have been really bad for T-Cole-Like's pull. It was an excellent attempt from Teaspoon. He just didn't have quite enough. And I think he's going to have to continue building up those airwaves. You can see the amount of build power it takes to funnel resources appropriately into air labs, and even then, he's not really spending all of his metal effectively. Yeah, you can see Teaspoon knows it too. He's going into even more over here, setting up a massive construction field to try and build even more potential power. Now, you can always use these, and here's a little hotkey trick for you. If you go V and then A, well, I mean, this works with any building, but effectively, if you shift and then alt, you can build a square, right? But if you hold spacebar and you have multiple constructors selected, when you release left click, it will distribute that queue between all the constructors. So what you can do is get 3 or 4 constructors and make a big square of build power and hold spacebar, and then what'll happen is they'll all start working on projects, and you'll find that it'll get put together quite a bit faster than you normally will be able to build, because they're constantly working on a project rather than, you know, it has to move a little bit, reorient, start up the new one, move a little bit, reorient, start up the new one. It's a helpful little trick to get your build power under control a little bit faster. Half of these labs aren't producing here. I wonder if we're going to notice. Bruce does not have them turned on right now. I think he means to. Also, these labs are not spaced properly. Yeah, what we should be seeing is these should be rallied in such a way that you distribute the effect across a wide area, and then you do it again, maybe like this, and then you do it again all over the place, like into the back line here, all over around the entire map. Because right now what's happening is this entire tick stream, well, currently 3 labs, but up to 6 labs of tick stream, is being countered by effectively whatever unit can do a little bit of AoE damage in this area where all these ticks are rallied. It's a subpar solution for sure, well, actually it's an optimal solution from the red team, but it's a subpar organization from the blue team. Something to be aware of. If you're going to waste metal on a unit spam, at the very least you want to make sure you waste it as efficiently as possible. Kind of the idea there. Catapults doing a lot of friendly fire damage. That's the downside to the catapults, right? Is that they're often want to friendly fire quite heavily here. As you can see, a lot of those rockets colliding with the friendly Titans and showing it no mercy here. As 2 of those Titans go down, and I think a 3rd one is about to follow in its brother's footsteps. Will faceplant into the dirt as these Karganeth manage to burst down whatever Titans they can find. Absolutely brutal. Meanwhile, there's a little bit of a Shiva push. Very nice. Alright. Alright, Encoded. I see you. Encoded managing to push a couple of Shiva through here does manage to sneak them up right where those ticks were coming out, meaning that a whole lot of damage will be done to those labs as well as the build power over there, effectively shutting them off completely. There's 1 lab remaining, so we could reinstate control over that area, but I don't know if it's worth it, not for Bruce anyway. He did notice now that 3 of those labs were destroyed. Well, 5 of those labs were destroyed, but only 3 of them were producing. At least hopefully he notices. So it might inadvertently hurt. Because now you're going to have more and more ticks coming back in your face if Bruce decides to rebuild here. Torpedo bombers dropping their payload on this capital ship, and you can see in just a few bombing runs they can burst down a capital ship very, very quickly. It's why it's so important that you have a whole lot of this anti-air included in your mixture. If your capital ship survives 1 bombing run, you might have a chance here of killing all these torpedo bombers, but they're very tanky. They're one of the tankiest bombers in the game, I do believe. I mean, aside from like the nuclear bomber, which is the tankiest bomber in the game, the torpedo bombers are relatively tanky as well. I mean, I guess all the T2 air units are considerably more tanky than the T1 units, but it's also subjective, right? It's air, so not exactly the craziest competition. There's still so much metal left over on the floor over here, by the way. Loads and loads of metal, both tied up in that T2 construction lab, as well as whatever ships were left on the bottom of the ocean floor. Would love to see some anti-air units floated on over right into this area here, just to shut down any airplay that might be lingering over the water. No reason to give those, or no reason to give up that free trade, rather. This bombing is really starting to hurt. Yeah, I mean, you can see even over direct flak, those bombers have no fear about just trying to, well, bomb down those flak carriers. So yeah, it's a very brave unit, that's for sure. Titans marching forward, trying to find their engagement, but really just taking a whole lot of hull damage without really any purpose. Yeah, it doesn't seem like we have much of a plan here. These are effectively scouting. They scouted that there's a lot of heat. A lot to deal with. Juggernauts from the red team are now moving forward with the cover from the catapults, as well as a couple of Shiva marching around underneath them. Juggernauts, of course, very, very powerful, but if you add in just a couple of support units, they can become damn near immortal. More and more Shiva walking under the depths of the sea. Under the sea, where the submarines be. Down where it's wetter, Shiva get better under the sea. Although I guess that's not true. Shiva don't really get better under the water. They're fairly useless when they're under the water. It's only once they pop their ugly heads out that they're actually able to fire, do effectively anything. Do we have an endgame in mind? The answer does not reveal itself to me immediately here, although I will say I'm so impressed by Teaspoon's airplay here. The fact that he's managed to field such a massive air is immense. I mean, against the fact that he is going up against 2 different players that are going into air here, it is a feat unto itself. Very, very nicely done. This airplay, probably one of the reasons why reclaiming over here has been so difficult. Yeah, you can see those bombers tearing apart even those flak ships there. Dragon Slayers, I believe, yeah. Nice air control here. Very, very nice. I'm very impressed. Managing an Air Force can be very tricky to do, just because of how fragile everything is. But you can see having fighter superiority, as well as the composition of bombers and fighters and all that good stuff, very, very powerful, and doing a great job of it. Have to really give it to Teaspoon here. No, I think we should keep expanding the economy. No reason not to. That goes for both these players. Oh, sorry. Guess I need to have a little more coffee. Haven't quite woken up today. That was a nice little shot. Long-range plasma cannon shot into the backline here. Caused a nice little chain reaction, ruining a little bit of the T1 eco that Bruce had been so painstakingly working on here. Now, this would be a tragedy if a couple plasma shots managed to land on top of the geothermal there. It looks like that might be what they're aiming for. Basilisk over here. Yep, that's exactly what it's aiming for, actually. I would love to see it. If we could pop that advanced geothermal, it would actually be game-ending right now. He needs direct hits, and he needs to land a couple of them in a row, and I don't know what the odds are, but I think they're pretty slim. There are constructor turrets around here, and so those constructor turrets are going to repair that geothermal whenever it gets hit. But maybe if we go into just a few more advanced, or a few more long-range plasma cannons, 51%, that's 49% off of this bad boy with just a single collision. So we need like three hits, right? 3 solid hits, one after another. That's not going to do it. The construction turrets don't repair that quickly, which is why I say we're going to need a couple of hits. Over time, though, I mean, your odds of it not happening are become preposterous. So eventually, don't quote me on that. Actually, I'm terrible at statistics. It should be well documented that I am a terrible statistician. I know hardly anything about what I'm talking about when it comes to statistics, but effectively, over the long run, I feel like eventually this thing's going to take enough shots that the Basilisk will be able to whittle it down. Hopefully, anyways. It's very, very good awareness right there to build that. Meanwhile, Shiva had been reallocated, and you can see them tearing apart this T3 defensive structure over here. Oh, Danger Close nuke was launched here. A little bit too far behind, and so it will end up missing most of them. That, oh, that really hurts. That Pulsar was built on top of a massive minefield, and the AoE from these Shiva will easily trigger the hair triggers on all of these heavy mines. Very dangerous positioning to put your units right on top of your own mines, especially when you're going up against Cortex, but yeah. Resbots patching together all of these Juggernauts and Titans and whatnot that have fallen on the floor here. There's one here, and there's another Juggernaut lying halfway in the ocean. Kind of a cool scene, right? You can imagine a book about that, right? Little tiny humans finding this wreckage of a Juggernaut on some alien planet, wondering how the hell it got there. Millions of years after this war has concluded, and one of the two factions has won. Comment down below which faction you think is going to win the war eventually. Personally, my bet is Armada, but that's just because I'm an Armada commander, so. Medium mines will be all it takes in order to shut down all of those Shiva on the coast. Very nicely done. Having the forethought to mine up that coastline there worked out phenomenally. Going to shut down a whole lot of these units very, very efficiently. In fact, all of these units very, very efficiently here with the help of some gunships and even a capital ship here. Yeah, very nicely done. That's actually going to deposit quite a lot of metal right into Paul 3D87's hands. We do have mass grunt fabrication here. Streaming them out on the front line. These ones are dispersed a little bit better here. Yeah, this is slightly better. You can see the area of effect is spread out, right? So they're not as clustered together. And that's exactly what you want, because you want the units to be swinging around back and forth. You want them to go left to right, all the way back and forth constantly. And yeah, one of the ways you can do that is by sending a massive spread of T1 trash. If only the Epoch knew about this juicy clump of Resbots right over here that is eating up, well, resurrecting up a Titan right there, a Juggernaut right there. Mixing all my words up. I got a couple of hits in. Not enough to shut everything down, though. Always terrifying when you see a Juggernaut or a Titan with a halo coming towards you. God damn it. I recognize the VIN number on that Titan. I've seen that before. That's our Titan. Junos are out. I wonder why they're not being used. Maybe just forgot about them. Easy to forget about. Junos do feel like one of those Junos do feel like one of those units that kind of fade off in the late game, but you really can't forget about them. They can be indispensable as you get into the late game and you need to start peeling back the tick spams as well as any of the radar jammers, any of that good stuff. What a massive push we've got going on right here. How many Titans? How many Juggernauts? 11 Titans, 7 Juggernauts, almost over 1,000 kills. We're about to get over 1,000 kills here, combined between all of them. Razorbacks as well, accompanied for quote-unquote light support, right? Light T3 support, maybe. Catapults eat a nuke right to the face, but for the most part, this army is unfazed by nuclear deterrence. And now you can see the march has happened. What do we have to stand against this? Currently, the answer is nothing. There are no T3 units out yet, aside from some cataphracts, which, despite being one of my favorite units in the game, are not very powerful. Yeah, they remind me of the good old days of the Clone Wars. However, they are not they're not notably the most powerful unit in the game. Black Diamond going for a little bit of a D-gun here. Oh, he's trying to get as much as possible. Oh, he's got a D-gun. Oh, massive D-gun right there. Humongous D-gun. Takes out a ton of the Titans, several of the Juggernauts. 2 of them went down. Tons and tons of those Titans went down as well. That is a huge D-gun. If there was ever a chance to recoup from this match or recover from this push, it's going to be with a couple more commanders D-gunning down these units. That was a huge D-gun. Absolutely massive. Infernium needs to get his ass on the front line immediately. Needs to get up there and start D-gunning down T3 as much as possible. If we can shut down a couple of these Titans and another 2 Juggernauts, I think this is holdable just by peeling commanders alone, but it's going to come at a heavy cost for sure. Marauder in the sea. Oh, there sure is. Meanwhile, Juggernaut has pushed all the way far forward over on the right-hand side. Doesn't manage to get far enough to do any damage to the economy, though, but there is a second one that is making its way downtown. Not walking too fast, but faces are passing. Infernium going for another D-gun. Doesn't cloak the commander. That's quite the decision here, as the Juggernauts do pop a whole bunch of advanced fusion reactors, and that is a massive amount of damage. At this point, these Juggernauts don't care about any damage per se. Their death will be their glory as they get close enough to this economy to do massive amounts of damage with their death explosion. Would love to see these self-destructed. You can see the radius of effect is quite a bit bigger when they self-destruct rather than when they just normally explode from a death. Wow. I mean, going from 7 Juggernauts down to 3, 4 Juggernauts. Is it 4? No, sorry, 3 Juggernauts in one push. I mean, that is a testament to the power here of the red team. But has too much damage already been done? I think so. Whoa! Meanwhile, something else is lagging out my game. Another Juggernaut goes down here. It looks like the Maroon players' production facilities will be spared. Over on the right-hand side, looks like a Juggernaut managed to sneak its way through. Must have been that pink one. Yeah, I'm guessing that pink Juggernaut got a little too close to the economy and managed to chain react a massive amount of it. Another Juggernaut death over on the left-hand side of the map brings down this player's base. What a back and forth right here. Both teams smacking each other in the face as hard and as fast as possible here. It's going to be Black Diamond effectively removed from this game. No constructors as far as I can see. And as well, it's going to be the land-based forces of Verdonian that are wiped out entirely. Huge production centers for the red team have been lost, and I think it's just too much damage. The economy for the blue team lingering around, well, shooting up now to 5,000, must be from a whole lot of reclaim. Indeed it is. You can see these resbots going around eating up tons and tons of metal, but aside from that, it's lingering around 2,000 metal production per second, whereas the blue team hovers closer to around 1.5, it would seem. Although again, that's also with red reclaiming. So both teams trying their very best. Actually, we're going to resurrect here. I quite like that. I mean, if we can get any of these Juggernauts rather back up and running, it'll be quite nice. But that's it's going to take more resbots than that. Oh, and it looks like the red team will decide that with that aggression, they have had enough. The blue team has borne down on them with all the might and fury that they could muster, and it was enough to cave the spirits of the red team. What an absolute banger of a match. Really, really back and forth right there. Love when these teams get up to that hyper advanced T3 unit composition. What a great push right there as well. Excellent attempt to degun down those Titans and those Juggernauts. That was some beautiful degunnery. I think if Infernium had stepped forward a little bit quicker there, he probably would have been able to maybe do enough damage to mitigate enough health that damage could have pushed through on the right-hand side, but I'm still not sure if it would have been enough. Anyways, I do hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Please consider dropping a like down below. It doesn't take too much time, but it really means the world to me, and I appreciate you guys immensely. I will see you in the very next of videos. Peace out, folks.